Tech News Weekly is sponsored by Hover.com. Go to gfu.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. FreshBooks. FreshBooks is an easy-to-use online invoicing service that saves you time, gets you paid faster, and makes you look professional. Get started completely for free at freshbooks.com. And by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook by going to audiblepodcast.com/GFQ.
Starting Tech News Weekly in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody, to Tech News Weekly on the GFQ Network. I'm Andrew Zarian. This week, I actually have a special guest on the line. Suncast could not be here. Actually, he was supposed to be here, even though we have a guest, and his internet connection died 3 minutes prior to starting the show. So this week, joining me for Tech News Weekly is Erik Lanigan. How you doing, Erik?
I'm great, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm glad you can make it. You can catch Erik live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the TWiT network for Late Night Tech with Erik Lanigan, 11 p.m. East. I didn't know it was 3 days a week. I knew it was. I believe I knew it was on Wednesdays because I catched it the tail end of it on Wednesday. But
yeah, well, this is brand new. This just started last week, so this will be episode 5, airing later tonight.
That's great because I really enjoyed the other show you were doing.
Tech Talkback.
Yeah,
this
I
is
loved
basically it's that show with a new name. It's now Late Night Tech, but it's the call-in show, which I host on TWiT, and so that's now 3 days a week.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. It was a great show, and I really hope it continues 3 days a week because that's great. That's really good because there's so many people with problems and they want to ask somebody, and it's a great call-in show.
Absolutely, thanks. Yeah, it's definitely fun to do.
You could also follow Erik on Twitter at Erik Lanigan or on his website at eriklanigan.com. I just went to the website and I checked it out. I was playing the website, actually. You have video playing, and I was like, where's this sound coming from? It's from the website. A lot going on today, Erik. God, the show's going to be overrun by Windows 8 stuff. And
Absolutely.
There's some other stuff that we'll cover, but the Windows 8 stuff is the big tech headline of the week with Microsoft really taking a total dive into this new Metro-style UI and really concentrating on this mobile platform. I mean, it is a mobile platform regardless of desktop use or laptop use. It's kind of intended for a tablet. Erik, what's your opinion on this? Because you are a Mac guy. Much like me, I use a MacBook Pro every day, but I also use Windows for production and things like that. But I'm kind of in the middle with this decision to go to this new UI. But I really want to get your opinion as someone that uses a Mac and is used to that type of environment.
Well, I think we have to look at it a couple of different directions. So one, I have some thoughts on what the interface looks like and how that design compares to the design of other tablet interfaces and touch-based interfaces. We've also got to look at it from the direction of how is it as a desktop OS? Is this the appropriate move for the desktop platform? And then also how it's going to fare with just actually the business of selling it. So I think with the Metro UI, I don't even know where to start because I have so many comments on this.
I know.
I think generally it's a risky move. So Andrew, where are you headed with this?
Well, I see. This is the thing that sucks with me is that I'm a power user and I really rely on a bare bones OS to pump this video out. I mean, we're doing. I don't know if you guys could see the shot on the camera, but we have VidBlaster running, and I have Erik on Skype, and I really could use every bit of CPU resources that I need. I'm using an i7 here, and it's, right now I'm at 70%, and I'm doing a lot on this thing. With this UI, it really dumbs down Windows. And I know a lot of people, and up until now, I've really been the one that says, we need a change for Windows, they need to drop legacy, and everybody has heard me say this, but now I'm thinking, what about me? What about enterprise? I don't think enterprise is going to welcome this. I don't think a lot of people that are used to this environment are going to welcome it. As far as an everyday laptop, if I have a laptop and I get this, I would, I think I'll welcome it in that sense if I'm an average user. But if I'm a power user of any sort, I don't think I'm going to welcome this new Metro-style UI. And from what I've seen, a couple of our guys have installed it on their laptops, and I don't know if it's because it's a developer preview and a lot of the things aren't, there's a lot of loose ends, but they're having a very difficult time with that whole swiping action across the screen. They're saying, well, it doesn't really make sense on a PC.
Who's having trouble? The folks putting this on non-touch based computers, or do they have a touch screen?
No, it's a laptop. It's a regular laptop, and they're saying, well, I could see how this can make sense, and it's great for a tablet or a touch based machine, but as far as a day-to-day computer goes, a lot of people are going to find this strange.
I agree, and I think that's the riskiest and strangest move about all of this. They're risking their 95% Windows market share, which is basically to say risking their company on this interface that is designed for tablets, which is this. And since they don't have a tablet interface because they don't have any real Windows competitive tablets competing with Android and iOS tablets, that product doesn't exist. There is no tablet OS yet like that from Microsoft. So they're betting the future of the company basically on this on a product that doesn't exist, because they're saying that their tablet touch-based interface is going to be so good that they're going to put it on everything, including the desktop, which is where all their users currently are. But if it's not that good in general as a tablet interface, and then bad for the desktop, then they've really screwed up.
Well, the thing is, you don't need, and again, you're not forced to this UI. You don't necessarily have to use the UI. You could still use the, classic mode as we're calling it. You could still use that environment if that's what you're comfortable with. But I don't know, and there are a couple weird things. Like there's that weird thing where applications don't shut down. Like it has this weird memory thing that it does with the applications. Like you don't hit X and the application goes away.
Yeah, in the demo they called it freeze dried. Yeah,
but I mean, where is it running? I'm sure it's sitting. So is it sitting in your memory?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe it puts it back into the virtual memory, but it just stops it. It just says you don't get to do anything until you're visible again.
But is it going to be like how the Mac, when you hit X, it doesn't necessarily close the application; it's still running it in the background?
No, think of it like iOS. When you switch into the way that iOS handles multitasking is they have a set of 5 services that they can use that apps can use for multitasking if specifically written for them, and everything else just gets paused and put away, and it will keep them in memory as long as necessary. But as soon as it needs that memory for other stuff, it just puts them away. But it kind of freezes them in whatever state they're in. So when it launches them again, it's got whatever text you were typing or whatever open windows happen to be there.
And in all honesty, I don't think what we think of it is really going to make a big difference, because we'll find something wrong or we'll like something that nobody really likes. I think it's what the mainstream is going to like. What is the average user going to think of this? I think in the beginning, a lot of people are going to go out and buy this. I think as an average consumer, I think people are going to fly out to get this new, different thing. A lot of people that wanted a Mac, that never wanted to get a Mac, are going to get this. It's going to be an incentive for people to buy because it's a totally new machine. So totally new operating system.
Now, Andrew, do you mean going out and buying
a computer?
Buying
Okay,
so
buying
not the
computer.
actual.
No, what? Maybe
not Windows 8 upgrade, but the actual upgrade premium. But an actual new tablet running this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to go and buy computers with this, but I don't understand. And again, I could, and this was something that I observed on the demo machine that I was seeing. If you have multi-touch function on your laptop, I think the Metro style UI will work because it's still the same thing. You're swiping. You could do 2-finger swipe. You could do 3-finger, whatever you're going to do with it. So the swipe mechanism works. But as far as using a mouse, like a regular mouse, or using a older laptop with this that doesn't have multi-touch functions, it's not going to be a very, very easy UI to use. Because right now, if you swipe, you're actually just swiping your mouse. And then you got to go all the way to the end of the screen, and then you could access the other screen. So it's not really like a swipe. It's actually you're scrolling side to side. So right. I don't know if that's only for the developer preview and they haven't really played around with that yet or what. But if it's what I see it being, I don't think a lot of people are going to be happy with this.
No, it's just a really weird decision because everyone else in the world, including Apple, including Google, have said that a touch-based interface for phones and mobile devices, battery-operated, in your pocket, in a bag, they're smaller, lighter, and lower powered than laptops. That's a class of device that needs its own operating system and its own set of unique software and its own set of unique interfaces and touch metaphors and how you interact with it. Then you've got a whole separate class of machines that is the desktop and the laptop and that different form factor that is keyboard and mouse primarily, and then a larger, more distant screen that's farther away from you. So if you analyze it as a tablet, that's one thing, because we can look at it and we can say, well, it's a very different design than other tablet interfaces like Android and iOS have adopted, even very different than WebOS. And maybe this minimalistic, opaque, two-dimensional, no gradients, no drop shadows, no 3D of any kind, maybe consumers will just look at that and just not like that, or maybe it'll take off and they'll have great success on the ARM-based tablet market. But then you've got the whole other side of that, which is the desktop market, which is still alive and well, and there will still be a lot of people, especially in business, which is their biggest customer by far, who are going to need these desktop PCs with keyboards, mice, and built for productivity, multiple screens, all that stuff. For those people, it seems like they're forcing and pushing this onto them, because the thing that I haven't heard them talk about, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they've said anything about this, is to say whether applications can switch between Metro mode and Classic mode. I think you have to choose which to write for. You either write for the new style or the old style.
Are you talking about developers? You're talking about like development of applications?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's either Win32 or it's the HTML based Metro style. You can't have an application do both. I don't think you can.
Right. So
as
it
far
seems
as
like
I know.
Right, because certainly we know that you can't go. Right. The underlying APIs are different for which side and which processor and which Metro versus Classic. But then within there, I haven't heard them say one word about whether an application can be written for both and can alternate between both, depending on whether your multi-device, your multi-tablet is either in docked PC mode or in touch first tablet mode, and then the software just switches. Like maybe Microsoft Office will just switch. I don't know. But it seems like they're pushing developers away from Classic towards the brand new stuff, towards that touch-first interface.
But if
so
this
I don't
is
know
the
how
future,
that's going to
though.
affect their largest business class that needs a keyboard and mouse.
Exactly. And how is this? What's going to happen to applications that rely on the standard? I mean, I know we're talking like in the future, and we're talking, the next OS. What's going to happen with the next OS? But this is going to, the spin that is going to revolve around developing for this operating system. It's almost going to be like you're developing. You're actually writing in two separate development forms and two separate languages for the same thing. And a lot of applications are also going to rely. So if you have an operating system, and if you have an application that is a standard Windows application, and you want there to be some sort of portal in or some sort of function in the new Metro style UI, you're going to actually have to physically write two separate pieces of software, because I don't think you could combine the two.
Right, that's how it seems, and it seems like they're really pushing developers towards that new Metro user experience, including all. I mean, you saw how they were pushing JavaScript and HTML5 as the main development environments, which I think is a whole separate set of risks, because if applications are so lightweight that they're essentially just web pages, how is Windows as an expensive proprietary non-open source operating system relevant anymore?
Yeah, it's interesting. As far as the features, and I want to go as far as what this would be as a tablet. As a tablet, I think this is a great move for Microsoft, and I think this is going to do really well. There are many people, and I have an iPad, and there are many times that I've said, you know what, I kind of wish that I had this application, or I wish I had Office on here and I could just do my stuff, or whatever the case may be. And I know there are many people out there that struggle with the same notions of, I wish this had this and this and this that I have on my Windows machine. I think for those people, this is going to be great. I think the UI is really good looking. It's a big move, and I give them a lot of credit for this. And then on the other side, there's some features that were added to Windows 8 that are really great, like the reset and refresh PC feature is a great feature. They're doing some great stuff with SkyDrive and online storage. There's some really cool stuff they added in here. I don't know, Eric, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, let's talk a year from now when this thing is getting ready to launch, and these computers are going to be here for back to school with Windows 8. What do you think is going to happen when that first person buys this computer, turns it on, and says, oh my God, what is this?
Do you think they will be ready for back to school 2012?
Well, right now, yeah, see, that's another thing, because they're really behind.
Some people are saying a year and a half.
But when Paul came on, he said, as far as development goes, they're really behind where Windows 7 was. But it's expected, because Windows 7 was, Vista done right. So they're pretty behind in this. So they're definitely going to push for October. So let's say first quarter we'll see the beta come out, or even December, we'll see a beta come out or some sort of testing thing come out, and they'll test and test and test. But even at launch, I don't think this thing will be totally ready. They have to meet that deadline. I don't know. Eric, it's tricky. It's a really tricky thing. It's a big risk. Yeah. I'm not going to jump. And I was really excited when Windows 7 came out. I'm not going to jump to Windows 8, especially on a full production machine.
Well, Andrew, I listen to what you're saying. I think that the thing that they have to do, I don't know if they will, but I think what they need to do is to get the Metro ARM-based user interface out there way before the rest of it comes.
Oh, because so you think launch Windows 8 on tablets and ARM-based devices before they even go to the desktop.
Yeah, get that stuff out there on ARM first, because one of the whole other discussions here is that this isn't that we may never see Metro or any of this stuff materialize in a product we can buy, but within a year or more. And by then, how much more advanced are Android and iOS and whatever WebOS becomes and others? How much more advanced are they going to be by then? So I think Microsoft has to just put all that crazy ribbon. Forget putting the ribbon in Windows Explorer for now. No one's holding their breath for that. Microsoft, you need to get a tablet OS to market. So rush that ARM version out, because that's going to be separate anyway. That's not really going to need. That doesn't need to be there at the same time as the all the x86 and the Windows Classic mode stuff gets there.
Well, right now they're saying it's going to be launched at the same time, right? They're going to do a big launch for everything.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever talked about that specifically, like for a reason, like a strategic reason. Mm-hmm. But they haven't said that they're not. So I think they think it's going to come out at the same time. But I think they need to rush the ARM-based one to the market first.
Strategically, I think it's better to launch them at separate times, because what are the odds of you going in there and buying a tablet and a computer at the same time?
Exactly. It's for a class of two separate devices. And again, it's so weird that they wouldn't. The whole risk of this, of betting the desktop and then the enterprise users and all those folks, there'd be no risk to that biggest market of theirs if they had only done one thing differently, and that's to make the tablet OS the same as the phone OS. And just make that a separate class of devices and a separate operating system and a separate class of applications from the desktop and keyboard and mouse interfaces, just like Apple and Google and others have done.
Well, now the whole thing is that the next generation phone, it's not confirmed, but it's likely to shift in the same direction. So the phone is going to run the same thing. Windows is going to run the PC is going to run the same thing. The tablet is going to run the same thing, and the odds of Xbox probably going to some sort of pull down, back end version of this will be likely. So everything is going to rely on this operating system. As far as Apple goes, Apple has kind of hinted that this is where they're headed. They're headed to a unified OS to some extent in the future. Do you see them putting out the next version of, OS X or whatever they're going to call it, let's say the next version of their operating system? Do you think they're going to go to something like this? I mean, this is a big move. But Apple has taken a risk in the past like this.
I think Apple is doing their move much more causely. I mean, the way
which
that
is
Microsoft
interesting, right? Which is fascinating.
Sorry, say that again.
Which is fascinating because Microsoft is a company that doesn't do those big risks.
Exactly. Microsoft is the one company that can't afford to be wrong about the risk that they're taking. The one company that can't afford really to take the risk of this big of a user interface shift. Because they have that, because they are the company of business. They're the company, like 99% of the world's businesses run on Microsoft products. At least their end users do. I'm not talking about Linux servers and stuff, but the end users and how they're trained and what they know how to use and how their software has been developed for their employees to run. So that's why Microsoft has to be concerned about business and enterprise and backwards compatibility and legacy compatibility before anything else. So they're the one company that can't afford to alienate all those people who might just look at a Linux desktop that can go right onto their existing Windows PCs without any kind of hardware upgrade costs when Windows abandons them next time they do their upgrade cycles. They're doing this. They're imposing such a overly simplistic design that can't possibly function properly with the keyboard and mouse. It's great on a tablet or a touch or a phone to have like 4 lines of text over the entire screen. It's big. It's easy to touch and read. But you flip over to Windows Classic and everything is like size 4 font, and it's like hundreds and thousands of words and icons and pixels everywhere on the screen. The complexity is so different. I don't see how the two match at all, and yet they're pushing everyone towards Metro.
What I fear happening, Eric, and this is just my opinion, of course, what I fear happening is that they are going to have such a negative reaction from enterprise. They're going to come out with an enterprise edition, which is going to be just the classic UI. They're going to have to keep them happy. I mean, look at who their clients are. I think a lot of people are already going to have that notion where they can't. Listen, if you're not an educated IT guy and you're not an educated boss, you're going to think, well, this is Windows. This is what it is. There's no way we're upgrading. We're going to stay with 7 for, or whatever we're on for the who knows how long, because I don't want to go to this weird thing. They're not going to understand that the back end is still the classic UI. So in order to keep those people happy, they're going to say, no. There's you could get a version without that stuff.
Or Andrew, because what they risk those people doing, first of all, they risk them not upgrading.
Yeah.
I saw a headline that said, "Is Windows 8 going to be is Windows 8 going to turn Windows 7 into Windows XP?" Meaning 10 years later, 50% of the user base is still using it and hasn't upgraded. Or will they just say, will the enterprise customers in their next upgrade cycle say, we're not going to buy Windows 8. Instead, we're going to go with Chrome OS. We're going to do a free and open source for our end users. We're going to give them the keyboard and mouse interface that they're used to, and we're just going to port our stuff to web browser and web-based operating systems anyway. It's all HTML5 and JavaScript anyway.
Yeah.
It seems that Microsoft is making themselves simultaneously less desirable for business and less relevant for business, because if they have to rewrite your apps anyway to be more like web pages, why not just rewrite them as web pages that live on the web or on your local internet and get a free OS?
Yeah, this is going to be. Listen, maybe we're wrong. Maybe by the time this thing comes out, we're going to realize that this is the greatest thing ever and jump to it. And I said, as far as a laptop goes, I would love to try this on a laptop. I have no urge to put this on a desktop. And that's not good.
Me neither. I see no urge to run out and download the developer preview.
I mean, I'm probably over the weekend, I'm going to put it on one of my laptops to check it out to see what it's like. But as far as a desktop goes, I don't need that stuff. And again, I'm the exception here, right? You're the exception. We're enthusiasts. We want to fiddle around. We want to play with it. And the perfect example is that the blue screen, the blue screen of death screen is no longer codes. I mean, and the argument as well, it was so
it's now an emoticon.
Isn't that hysterical?
The blue screen of death is still blue and it's still death, but it now has a smiley face.
And I don't know. See, this is the thing. Yes, it was a useless thing, and sometimes it would go by so fast where you had no idea what it was saying. But there have been many, many times where a hardware has been failing on me in this computer, and I had to rely on that screen to give me some piece of code where I could read, or something in that error where I could say, okay, it's a creative problem, so I know it's my sound card. I've had to do that many times. I had my Blackmagic card fail on me, and I did not know what it was unless I saw that screen.
My guess is they'll have some kind of debug
log
mode, or they'll have some kind of log that gets written to or something.
But it's interesting because I guess simple is the way to go, right? This is the future. There's no need for back-end knowledge. You turn this thing on and it's supposed to do everything for you.
Haha, that gets into a whole new aspect that I would love to share with you my thoughts on. So can we trust Microsoft to write an interface that is that simplistic? This is actually a great bridge between, we had been talking about the desktop. Is this right for desktops? I would like to shift into, is this right for tablets and how it competes with iOS and Android? But in the middle right there is, can we even trust Microsoft? Do they even have what it takes to make a simplified version of their operating system, to make a simple operating system in general that is so simple and better that it actually is more visually simplified and competitive in that regard with iOS and Android? And what worries me about that, actually, Andrew, what do you think?
As far as the tablet goes, are you saying as far as the tablet goes, or as far as the desktop goes?
Well, let's say the tab. Well, okay. So my criticism here of what they're doing is, at the same time that they seem to be moving people away from Windows Classic and moving developers away and kind of winking and hinting at that Metro is the future designed for it and be cross-platform with ARM. At the same time that they're doing that, they're putting in greater complexity to the Windows Classic mode. They're adding that crazy ribbon where they're bringing up all these like 1% and 0% buttons to the surface and hitting you over the head with them. And they're, what is the other thing that they added in complexity? There's the ribbon, and there was some other thing that they did. But what I look at and say is the perfect example of Microsoft being too complex. Oh, okay. So it was the ribbon, and it was the file copying dialog boxes where they now have the actual a line graph that moves along and it shows you the actual copying rate. Just like such geeky and complicated and visually complex stuff that no one cares to see. So the best example of this. So how can that company that is simultaneously designing such crazily complex things that hurt the user's mind and something that is so simple that it literally is more minimalistic than something Apple than the software Apple designs? How can that same company reconcile those two mindsets, and how can the same Windows team develop for them simultaneously?
Yeah, that's a very interesting. I don't know. See, that's the thing. I don't know.
Because here's the slide. Here's the image that I'm looking at. So, have you seen the slide that says how Apple does it, a virtuous cycle?
No. Where can I see that?
Google that. Say how Apple does it, a virtuous cycle, or Google Microsoft copies Apple, and you'll see a leaked slide that says that it's Microsoft Confidential from 2010, and this is supposedly a leaked slide that Microsoft showed internally about how Apple designs their products and how they should be more like them.
How Apple does it. Okay, I see it.
And
Apple branding is known for high quality.
Yeah, starts with a brand promise of it just works. Then it says the user experience is low in friction. That's what they describe it, low in friction. That leads to confidence in ability to use, which leads to realized value, which leads to high satisfaction, which goes back to brand promise, and then it's a virtuous cycle. So by having a user interface that is low in friction, meaning it doesn't bug you and it's easy to understand and wrap your head around, you're more confident to venture out into the world of app downloading and app stores and using the product more than you might if you were afraid.
See, that's the thing. I think the app idea makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a great thing that for Windows to implement in their operating system. As far as how the Mac has the App Store on OS X, I think it's a great way to keep their users safe from looking around and finding applications and getting infected with whatever it may be. I think adding the Windows Store will cut down on malware and spyware infections tremendously, or whatever they're getting by whatever they're doing. There are a lot of people out there that don't know what they're downloading, and they're downloading an application that does not exist. There are a lot of websites out there where you put in, Skype, and you don't go to Skype's official site, but who knows why you wouldn't, but there are people that do. Will get infected with whatever they're clicking on. They click on the wrong box. This is going to cut down tremendously. So the app idea of being involved in the OS and being involved in the environment is a great idea. As far as simplifying it to the point where it's, and again, we're not talking about classic mode. We're going to talk about the Metro style UI, because that is the apparent future of Windows, right?
Yeah. Well,
that's
Andrew,
where we're going.
Saying so that the user experience is low in friction.
I don't know.
And not intimidating to users. If you ask me, that ribbon is as low that is adding friction. That is plastering friction over something that was just fine before. It had 3 buttons before, and according to their metrics, that's what most people clicked.
Yeah.
And now they've put, and they said, and they showed it's, so it's like it's worrisome, because it's like what goes through their minds, because they have this blog post that says we look at the data and the metrics and we design based on what our users like. And it shows that 95% of what people click is cut and then paste and like all those percents.
Oh yeah, I saw that. But that was useless.
And it's like the 0 and the 1%. And it says, so we took that data about what you clicked on the most and we made this. And they show this ribbon that is like the whole thing is the 0 and 1% stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's like for invert selection. I've never inverted selection in Windows Explorer or the Finder in my life, maybe in Photoshop. So it's stuff that people don't even know exists or wants to see ever or ever use, now bugging them, saying, do you want to use this? That's adding friction. And the worst example, or the best example, I should say, of this kind of Microsoft thinking, not knowing how to get rid of this friction, is on the Mac. When I just tried to view their keynote full screen earlier this week, I got an error message just trying to click the full screen button in Microsoft Silverlight. It said, would you like to allow Silverlight to stay in full screen mode when you interact with another window? If you choose no, the website will still enter full screen mode, but will exit full screen mode when it loses focus. I don't know. I just want to watch the video full screen. I didn't even know that function ever even existed. And now it's bugging me to tell it whether I want to do that into the future before I've even watched my video.
So this brings up an interesting thing. How many people are developing for this platform, and how many different teams are developing?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's another question. Yeah.
Yeah. Do they have the kind of unified vision that we know Apple has, just business-wise, because they always talk about how they're either developing for iOS or Mac OS or the Pro apps or iLife. They have very small teams, and I think it's because that way they can keep focus and keep consistency product to product.
I don't know. See, you're bringing up such a good, valid point to this, and I want to like it. I really do. I want to like it, and I don't want to base my opinion on, what I've seen from other people and heard from other people. But this Metro style UI is going to make a lot of people unhappy, and we're talking about, the enthusiasts. But we don't matter in reality. We really do not matter. Enterprise matters, and the regular consumer matters. And who matters more between the regular consumer and enterprise? Enterprise.
Right, exactly.
What do you do?
So
what do you do in the case where enterprise does not care for this UI? They want nothing to do with this. But the consumer probably will be happy with this because they don't want to deal with it. They like the iPad stuff. It's the same argument where I've had arguments with people saying, I don't understand how you use an iPad for everything. And they go, I don't understand how you use a computer. Why do you need a computer? The iPad could do everything for you. And I throw my hands up in the air and I say, I cannot work like that. But there are people that the simple functions of the iPad is what they want. Is that who they think the future relies on? Is a person that does not really care to know, like just like you said, in Silverlight you have all these different options.
It's almost like they expect the future to be McDonald's employees just punching the screen without even needing to know English.
But that's going to be the future of computing, sadly. I mean, on both ends.
I think they think maybe it's a cynical and dumbed down vision of the future, like in that movie Idiocracy. Yeah. But it's like they think that people are just going to like, oh, I want a big tile. I don't know how to read or to use a mouse. I don't know. Even in business is the point. Like instead of making their Excel spreadsheets are going to have like 4 cells per page, and they swipe to the left to get to the other one.
Now this is interesting. Okay. So now you brought up Excel and you brought up Office. So this is where things are going to get weird, right? You have this beautiful Metro style UI and you have classic mode. But if you want to use Office, you're going to have to go to, classic mode to use this. It's not going to streamline too well. I don't think it is. I don't think the UI is going to be streamlined as far as using an application that's with the Metro style UI and then bouncing back into classic mode and then bouncing back. It's almost like
it's going to screw people up mentally. But like new users who are learning this for the first time, like people who are, coming into the business world just by age, like 10, 20 years into the future, they're going to have to imagine if all you knew was just the classic mode. I mean, or rather all you knew was the Metro UI mode. And then they tell you you've got to learn this classic thing just for Office. I mean, that's crazy. But also that's going to have to answer the question of how do apps get to switch between modes? Will Office, whenever it does get some kind of Metro rewrite, does it switch modes? And if so, what in the world will it look like? Because if you ask me, Office with its ribbon metaphor of a user interface is the antithesis of that super simplified touch interface.
You think so? You think it's supposed to? Yeah, I don't know. This is so crazy. I can't believe we're having this discussion in 2011. You know what I mean? Like we're having this discussion of why it's so simplified. I mean, in all senses. I mean, is Apple going to go in this direction? Now, this is another thing. Apple's probably going to go in the same direction now.
Well, Andrew, it's funny. Hold on. It's funny that you say we're having it in 2011, as if I think what you're implying is you would have thought, this had been worked out in the past, right?
Yeah,
we're far along enough in computing, and yet all that stuff that Xerox came up with, that Apple stole, that Microsoft then stole from those two, and so on, those computing metaphors have been the only option out there now for over 20 years. And now, just because this is how things can shift so immediately, because Apple had such a successful iPhone that shifted everything to that multi-touch world, and then everything went to mobile, GPS, coordinated Wi-Fi, 3G enabled, constantly with you, internet connections in your pocket. Suddenly the world has shifted, and we're getting into this brand new interface where it's finger-based and has all this 3D capability and is just reimagined from the ground up for low-power, battery-powered devices, which is then going back to the desktop now and changing everything.
Yeah, we've almost yeah, right. The iPhone totally changed the direction that we were going in. And now we're in this direction where, you know what? Forget about giving them the options. Forget about telling them how to fix this and how to debug this. Hell with it. Let's just give them the simplest UI so they can't screw it up. Let's just give them big buttons and let them click on things and let them download apps and play around with it. I get this is the future of it, Eric. I mean, this is where we're headed, and this is where both major companies, both Apple and Microsoft, are going with their operating system. It's this unified UI where everything one OS for all.
So let's talk about the tablet side then. Let's suppose you're a consumer. You go into Best Buy and you want to get a tablet for some reason. I don't know. First of all, that's the first problem they have to solve is, do people even want tablets? Is there even a market for the product that they're now basing their entire major product line?
Honestly, I think yes. For Microsoft, there's a big market now. I think Microsoft can potentially dominate this market. I think the iOS stuff, the Apple guys are going to stick with Apple, but I think there's a huge group of people that want to get an iPad, but they don't get it. They feel that it's not Windows. They can't do work on it. And there are going to be people that buy this Microsoft thing.
Oh, but hold on there, Andrew, because the ARM-based tablets can't do any more application. It can't do any more work. Like, it's not like, I'll get that so I can run all my software. By the time this hits the market, it'll have substantially, like hundreds of thousands of fewer applications compared to Android or iOS. So really, it's going to be the tablet of less productivity when it first comes out. It's just going to be the tablet of greater simplicity, to the point of someone called it baby's first operating system. And talking about competitiveness with Android is free. This costs money. If Android tablets can't compete with the iPad because they can't get the cost low enough of the hardware, how will those exact same hardware manufacturers get the cost so much lower than the iPad that they can afford to pay Microsoft for another operating system to put on it?
I think as far as the Android goes, I think we're going to see how Amazon does with Android. If Amazon is going to be successful with Android and their, special Android edition, whatever. What do you know what version they're going to use? Because are they going to use Honeycomb on that, or are they going to use an older OS on the Amazon tablet?
Oh, I have no idea, and it's all speculation at this point.
Because this is the funny stuff with that, because isn't 3.0 not out for people, unless you're a licensed, Google certified.
You talking about Ice Cream Sandwich?
Yeah. No. I'm talking about Honeycomb, because it's not going to run Ice Cream Sandwich. Yeah. If at most it's going to run Honeycomb, and I don't even know if it's going to run Honeycomb. It might be doing 2 point something and just this weird whacked out version of it. But if Amazon,
a lot of that. But Andrew, a lot of that stuff is fine. A lot of that is. From what I've heard, I think the rumor has it that Amazon's going to do a substantially customize the Android interface themselves.
Yeah.
So, and when we talk about software being out of date like that, the OS, really what we really want is we want that new eye candy, and we want the new user-facing features. But if Amazon is writing all their own user-facing features,
it doesn't even matter.
Then the rest of what comes with it usually is types of hardware compatibility. But if Amazon makes their own tablet and their own OS and they can write to that specifically, then they can customize Gingerbread even if they needed to, like Samsung and some do with their custom skins, as much as they need for their hardware.
Well, as far as the Amazon thing goes, we're going to see how if they're successful with this device. I think it's going to be a very competitive world for Amazon in the tablet. For Android in the tablet world. But as far as right now, there is the tablet market is dead. The iPad is an anomaly in this situation, and the iPad, I do not consider it in the tablet market. The iPad is a freak of nature if you consider it, because tablets have not been successful. Nobody's putting out a successful tablet. Android, none of these Android tablets are successful. RIM reported under 500,000 sold units, which is awful for the playbook, and that was going to be the hope. We see the touchpad, which I thought it was a decent OS on that thing, and web OS, but it was not successful, and that failed. So if you look at the trend, the tablet market is a failing category to be putting a device in. I do not know if Android will be successful. I don't know. Because I have an Android phone, I'm an Android user. I absolutely hate Android at this point. I think it's just poorly done when you compare it to the iPhone.
From a user interface perspective, you're saying?
Poorly done.
Yeah,
and functionality. I think the fact that it's so open, where all these, I just have such a hard time with it. I have such a hard time with it.
Well, it's interesting that you said that the user experience leaves something to be desired, because a lot of people, a lot of smart reviewers and geeks and critics have said that they say that they like iOS better, not just because of the software ecosystem or the under the hood stuff, but it's actually easier to use.
It's much easier to use. And the perfect example is if I want to send a text message, I don't want to fiddle around and wait to send a text message. If I want to take a photo, if I want to take a picture, I could take my iOS device and I could take my phone. It'll be, by the time I load up my camera on my Android, I'll have taken a picture and I would have seen it already on my iOS device. And those are the little things that really matter.
Exactly. So that's a whole other thing to be scared about, because that Metro UI has got a lot of competition. You've got Apple's out there, which is the most popular by far, by like 80% of the market. Then you've got Android, which is the honeycomb and ice cream sandwich. That's a slick interface. I like it's black and it's got the translucent and it's like glass and very cool 3D stuff and shading. I'm a fan of that stuff. I like that look. I like that Android kind of dark but 3D look more than I think I like Metro, which is so flat. I mean, it throws away. It eschews all the things that have come to be in operating system design. There are no drop shadows. There's no transparency, no translucency. There are no round, soft edges. Specifically, it's all that stuff that Apple does. They're trying to move away as far from that and differentiate themselves in appearance. But there's no evidence that people like that look, purely from design. It's like, it kind of looks like a magazine, right? It's got like big words, with minimal, there aren't a lot of icons. It's mostly like word-based, even for things that have usually had icons like save and open. They're now just words with no picture. Yeah. That's a weird decision if you ask me. A picture can say 1,000 words. Yeah. So they're doing that. That's one difference. The whole, everything is so flat. It's decisively not 3D. So it's such a bold statement that, and almost cartoony, like that. It's kind of almost like that Fisher-Price kind of look they did with XP, at least in the color scheme. So that's a whole separate area of competition that is unproven, because they've never had a device in the market that got better than 1% market share, Zune or Windows Phone 7, that had that interface.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to continue this, but I also want to remind everybody, Erik is live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on the TWiT network. You can watch him on his show, Late Night Tech with Erik Lanigan, at 11 p.m. East at live.twit.tv. Is it on podcast form also? Can they download it? Currently it's only on the live shows.
It's currently only live.
Okay, so go check him out. He's live tonight, Friday, at 11 p.m. East. You could also follow Erik at Erik Lanigan on Twitter, and also visit him at eriklanigan.com. A lot of good stuff here. I want to kind of shift into because we could talk about this stuff for hours, this Windows 8 stuff, because this is, and you know what, this is exciting.
That's okay, Andrew. I'll bottle it up for it later tonight.
Yeah. Save a lot of it for tonight, because I know you're going to get a lot of calls for this. I know on Wednesday you had a lot of Windows 8 stuff, but
absolutely.
As far as I want to talk about what Apple's counter to this would be, because this is going to get interesting, because Apple now, if you look at it, once this operating system comes out, and a year is a long, there's a lot that could happen in a year, Apple will be the traditional UI and traditional operating system now. If you look at like cutting edge and risk taking that Apple is known for, they've really broken all boundaries with their iPhone and with their OS, but now it's Microsoft in some weird sense. Do you think Apple's counter will be, let's just sit back and see how the hell this thing does? Maybe we shouldn't go to a unified UI.
I think they're going to stick with their Helvetica, and they're going to stick with their rounded rectangles, and they're going to hold their position, stick to their guns. I expected to see a big visual overhaul with iOS 5. We didn't see that, and now it seems like it won't be. And I expect iOS 5 to be on the market for at least a year, or a year and a half. So I think they're going to just hold their position as the market leader, at least in that market, not getting into all the Android handsets.
Have you been playing around with iOS 5?
I haven't.
You haven't. See, is it that big of a change? I know there's some features that I would like, but I haven't really seen a major overhaul in the UI, in the OS.
No, I mean the user interface has not really changed at all. It's got some cool features. I'll have to. It feels like they announced that a long time ago.
Yeah,
I guess it was back in June. Yeah. But they showed it's got that BlackBerry Messenger competitor, free text messaging, all that stuff. So it has some cool features, but nothing that compelled me to risk voiding the warranty on my phone.
I don't know. This is a funny market now because it's so dominated. And I know Android dominates. Android is 50-something% of the category, but there's so many different Android phones out there where none of them have any kind of significant market share if you look at it. It's just a bunch of phones running all different versions of Android, and that's been my biggest problem with Android. There's so many, they need to stick to and Microsoft is doing good with this because Microsoft has a strict policy on what kind of hardware will run their phones, what kind of hardware will run their for their tablets. I don't think Android has this, and I think this is going to be the downfall for Android and for Google in the long run.
Right. I've heard that said that because that Apple will continue to have that advantage because they only have one or two hardware designs per generation of the operating system. So the app developers can optimize their stuff precisely to that hardware that Windows will be able to do even less than Android can do. Yeah. But the other thing that I think is just it's insanely risky that Microsoft is doing here is they're betting their future also on the idea that the tablet and the PC is the same device. That is this convertible machine. It docks, it converts, it upconverts. It's a phone, it's a tablet, it's a home PC. With the same device that's always with you. I don't think that's where the tablet industry is going at all. I think people want tablets to be these cheap media consumption devices that they can have lots of for cheap.
But see, that's the thing, Eric. It's not. It's not a cheap media consumption device that you could have lots of. You're still paying $600 for this thing that's not a full-fledged computer. This is where the problem lies. So where do you go with this? I know that the argument is that, they're going to put out these ARM devices. They're going to be $199, $299. I don't even think they'll be $199. I think the cheapest these devices will be is $299. If we see cheaper, even with this Amazon tablet, I'll be shocked if we see a cheaper device come out because it still costs them a lot of money to produce this. The marketing, everything that goes into pushing these devices to the market makes it expensive. I don't think these devices currently in the state that they're in will be under $300, $400. That's right, where it is.
Not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon.
But what's going to happen with the tablets is the same thing that's happened with the desktops and the laptops. The largest set of computing that we do is text-based. We read and we type. And once you get that, and we read books and things in addition to websites, and we play videos, which is more and more is a very, like you can put an H.264 decoder chip in there now for like 5 cents. So that's covered too. That's almost as cheap as reading and writing video playback. So once you have those basic necessities covered, that baseline of media consumption gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper without ever adding more complexity to it. So that can get down to a device that's eventually $100 or less. I'm talking like like maybe 3 years from now.
You think in 3 years it'll? Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's crazy, though. I mean, what do you think the pricing should be right now? I think $199 is the perfect pricing for these devices. $199, I could buy them. $299 even, I could buy them. But when you're talking about a $600 device, a $500 device like the iPad and all these Android tablets that came out, see, that was a big mistake Android made. And I know they're trying to push these really high-end devices, and it's a new market, and they're going to be pricey. But when you're competing against the iPad, which is so dominant in this tablet world, and the ecosphere of it, everything is there already. The apps are there. The support is there. The development is there. And you have Android coming out. And Motorola really thought they would do well with the Zoom, the XOOM, Zoom, not Zune, that they put out. And it failed because the stupid thing was $600.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you a little secret that occurred to me that I haven't heard anyone talk about. I think that the reason the iPad is an anomaly is because Apple is inherently an upmarket company. While the iPad seems cheap, it only seems cheap because it's the cheapest product that Apple's ever made. Mm-hmm. That's the closest thing to a laptop at $499. That's like the cheapest product that Apple's ever released that could be called a computer in like the last 10 years or more, maybe 20 years. So a lot of people that maybe wouldn't even consider Apple products because they thought they were too expensive said, "Ooh, an Apple computer for a luxury product like that for $500? I can afford that." And they did their classic affordable luxury thing. Mm-hmm. They're one of those affordable luxury companies like BMW and Starbucks. You can't have the same house or Ferrari that the celebrities have, but you can use the same computer.
That's a really good. You know what? I never thought of it like that. It's like when BMW puts out the 1 Series.
You're getting an exclusive here because I haven't seen that anywhere. I literally just thought of this like an hour before the show. So that $500 price point, people think that's exceptionally low for what they're getting.
But in reality, it's not.
But it's actually exceptionally high because the real price point that like the PC equivalent, your mainstream like a Dell tablet was going to be is like that $199 price point for the next couple of years. So Apple's at $500 is actually extra expensive, but people are doing it because they pay extra already for the Apple brand and that affordable luxury and perceived brand value and brand identity. Whereas the other guys think that they're trying to make a laptop. They're trying to hit $1,000 price point. So they have a Zoom that's like $1,000 for the 32 gigabyte model. And then they're trying to subsidize that down. So they're coming from the completely different direction. Whatever manufacturing magic Apple has done, that Tim Cook, genius, getting the price so much lower that they can compete on hardware alone, that's the key. The iPad is more expensive than people think, not less.
No, I don't think it's cheap at all. I think the thing about the iPad is that they never need to lower the price for that reason, because they are considered a luxury item. But when you're Amazon, you're these different companies coming out and trying to compete with them. Don't compete with them on the same level. And you bring up an interesting point. Hyundai is now putting out a $65,000 car, because they think because you have all these features, you could compete with a Mercedes or a BMW. So that's a great analogy, and that's a great way to put it. It's such a screwed up. It's the Wild West again in computing. I mean, I feel like we've
absolutely
gone to this weird way where there's Amiga and there's Commodore and there's Windows, and it's like everything at the same time, and it's We're
in a time of great experimentation, a lot of trial and error.
Well, it's exciting, and I told Paul on Tuesday when he was on What the Tech, I'm excited for technology again, and I haven't been excited for a long time, and I can't remember the last time I was excited. I wasn't even excited when the iPhone came out, because I honestly, I was one of the few people, and I was, if you had taken my money, I would have been bankrupt. I told people this is stupid, it won't work. I was a Palm guy. I was a Palm Trio guy, and I said, well, what is Apple going to do? I wasn't an Apple guy at that point. I didn't have a Mac, and this thing changed, the phone. Changed the way we do computing as a whole right now. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
If that device had not come out, I don't think we'd be having this discussion about a tablet or where Windows is going. But where do we go from here? I mean, as a enthusiast, and I know many people are upset over this, as far as the enthusiasts go, I have not heard many people say, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. Because it's taken away options. I think if they had the UI and they gave us the same amount of options that we've had all along, and even more options to configure and to turn things off and turn things on, I think a lot of people would be happy. It almost feels like they're saying, well, this is where we're going. We're going to still give you this classic UI for a little bit, but don't expect it in the long run.
Yeah, and that's I think that's the source of my confusion about why they continue to develop for it, and not just develop for it, but add complexity. What they need, it seems like what they needed to be doing is to continue to do innovative ideas for how to make their desktop interface, their traditional Windows Classic interface, simpler for the average user. Instead, they've made it more complicated, and the Metro so simplistic that it barely runs most software in a visual format that makes sense.
I don't know. Can we go to Facebook? Let's go to Facebook. I mean, that's good. Another thing. I mean, I actually want to talk about Facebook for a little bit before we wrap up, because Facebook has added a subscribe button, and a lot of people, I've been getting a lot of questions over this, because they're saying it's going to be like Twitter almost to some extent, where people could follow you but not necessarily be your friend. Do you think this is necessary in any level?
I haven't seen this. So what is it? What is it a subscription of? Of
your feed. So I could go, let me go to my feed, actually. Let me see how this works.
Meaning my status updates, or does it incorporate friends' posts and other things?
Well, you could kind of customize subscriptions, and you could subscribe. So there are people, let's say, you don't want to have me as your friend, but you do want people to... I don't like you. You don't like me. You could subscribe. I could subscribe to your feed and be limited on what I see. If that makes any sense.
It doesn't. I'm gonna go to. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you a rest. I'm gonna go to blog.facebook.com, and I'm gonna look at what we're talking about here.
I'm trying to explain it. Like, they're saying it's much like Twitter. I'm trying to find the story here for that, because there's like 20 pages of notes here. I just want to. Okay, so here it is. Just a few days ago, it was announced that Facebook has announced another feature called Subscribe Button. Facebook users will soon see a new subscribe option on some people's profiles. When clicking on the button on a friend's profile, users will have the option to subscribe to all, most, or only important updates the other person posts on his site. Those updates will show up in the user's newsfeed.
So Andrew, have you been following a number of these Facebook updates lately? Have they been kind of encroaching closer and closer towards being Google Plus?
I think that's what they're trying to do. But are you use Google Plus, right?
I'm a member. I don't
use
technically use it. I add people, but I never go back and read it.
Do you use Facebook or
Not really.
nothing?
No, I don't like just seeing stuff just go by constantly throughout the day. I'm easily distracted, and that just kills my productivity.
See, I like Facebook. I don't get the whole Twitter thing. I understand how important it is to be on Twitter, especially what I'm doing. But yeah, a lot of people don't have to subscribe. That's weird. I have subscribed, but a lot of people don't. I wonder why. Huh. I guess it's not enabled for everybody.
Oh, you said you what happened? I missed that. You just found that you have the subscribe
I
button?
have subscribe on mine. I have subscriptions and subscribers.
Well, that's typical of Facebook. They roll things out in waves.
So I guess maybe if you have a public profile, you get it first. But pretty much like Mark Zuckerberg, and Kevin Rose. So I'm subscribed to Kevin Rose in some way, which I never did. So okay, so you have the option if you could allow people to subscribe and see your, I guess, page and see things that you post, but not allow them to do other things. Like they can't see your photos in some sense. But I don't understand. I don't get, like, I know what they're trying to do, but it's a useless function if you ask me. It's a useless function.
I don't know.
I'm trying to see here if there's any reason why. They're saying...
Well, I'm sure it's to be like Twitter, and
that's what it is.
To a lesser extent, Facebook Plus.
That's what it is. It's to, but if I don't want you to see what I'm writing, I'm just not going to let you see what I'm writing. I don't understand why it's. I can see your friends. I can't see your photos. That's one thing. I can't see your photos. I could just see your posts. And it's limited posts, actually. Okay, so pretty much it allows you to prevent people from seeing everything.
I think what happened is that Facebook limited their usability by making your friend feed essentially everybody. So you get a lot that you don't want to see. So they want to give people a chance to filter that out. But the thing that confuses me is, and all the recent changes they've made since Google Plus came out, I don't think any of them have duplicated what Google Plus has with the anonymous lists, where they don't tell people what lists you're in. So you can say people I hate, and they don't know that you're in that list.
Yeah,
that's useful. Or don't tell these people this or that. So which you can't do with Facebook. So how do you, with Facebook, the lists tell them what group they're in? And I don't think they've done anything to change that in the last couple of months, have they?
No. Well, they've changed some little features, but you pretty much cannot control. You can't group people. And I really think you should be able to group people on Facebook. I think that grouping stuff, I know there are groups, but it's not really what Google's doing with Google Plus. There are times that I'll give you an example. My wife does not disclose what she does for a living on the air. But there are people that found out. But she doesn't really talk about it. So there are people, when she sends a tweet out, or she sends a Facebook message out, she would love the fact to say, okay, you know what? I don't want people that I know are fans of the shows. I don't want them to see this message, so I'm just going to send it out to these people. A feature like that, like in Google Plus, would be extremely beneficial for her, but she's using Facebook.
Right, like when she just tweets out to her CIA friends whom she's assassinated overseas.
Exactly.
You only want your CIA friends to see that.
Yeah, so there are times where that happens, but the subscription thing, I guess it prevents you. You could have subscribers, and it's just, you know what it is? I'll tell you what they did. This is a great way to say, well, look, I have 146,000 subscribers. It's a numbers game. That's what this is. That's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to do rankings, much like all the other services. And look, Kevin Rose has 146,000 subscribers. I don't even know. I never added him. Mark Zuckerberg has how many? Let's see here. Let's go to Mark.
So these numbers you're reading are as of September 14th, 10 a.m. when they introduced this.
No, right now. I'm looking at my feed.
Sorry. I meant since, not as of since.
Yeah.
So all these subscribers happened since then.
No, see, this is another thing. See, here's the funny thing. So
they're automatically
subscribed. There's certain people that say, if you have a public profile and your profile is open to everybody, and I add you as a friend, right? But you never confirm me as a friend, you automatically become a subscriber. So the people that are sitting in limbo, Where let's say I have a public profile, everybody can see my profile. You send me a friend request, I don't really want to add you as a friend. You now convert to a subscriber. I don't know why that makes any sense. Mark Zuckerberg has 5 million, by the way. 5.3 million. So 5.3 million.
I'm confused because I thought they did. I thought they did have a function that did that already. I thought that's what. Isn't that what? The public profile. That's the point of the public profile. I thought was that way you can be. It was like being friends with someone who didn't friend you back.
Yes, yeah, they do have that. They do have that exists. But I guess now they're calling it subscribers. That's what they've done. They've changed it over to being a subscriber.
Oh, they just changed the name?
They kind of. I think that's what they did. That's what it looks like to me.
Oh.
So now if you have a public profile and I add you as a friend and you don't accept me as a friend, but you could see my profile. That's how it always was. Now I come up in your feed. So now they call it a subscriber where my stuff shows up in your feed, but we're not really friends. You're subscribing to me. I guess if I add you back, then are you a friend? See, this is just another useless feature that they're adding to these services. I guess they're trying to, they want to subscribe. They want a name for this. So they could create a list of most subscribed people. That's how I see this.
And what will they do with that? You say they want that for the numbers. What will they do?
That looks good for them as a business. Say, oh, look, Mark Zuckerberg has 5 million subscribers. It's a ranking. It encourages people to do this. It encourages people to talk about it. Twitter was doing great with that, where there were people that were non-celebrities, like somewhat celebrities, but not like Ashton Kutcher. They were in the ranking. So it was like almost like a competition amongst these people to promote Twitter and push it and get more followers. I think they're trying to do the same.
Right. They want to be able to have that followers number like Twitter does to say, to show the level of engagement and who the most popular people in the world are who are using their site. But didn't they already have that? Because the pages count, the public profile pages always had a number of people, and then they had the like button, so they had that vote also. But yeah, I think it always did have it had a fan count because it was like become a fan.
Let's see. It says, what more? Both services are similar in privacy. I guess talking about Twitter and Facebook. If users want to allow others to subscribe to their public updates, they will need to go to their subscribe page and it says allow subscriptions. However, those who do not want to share their updates can just ignore the setting. This is stupid. I'm sorry. This is just useless. Doesn't that stuff like bother you that they're adding all these useless functions and they're gonna? I don't know. Is it that big of a deal? Do we need this? You think people
I don't know.
I
have a hard time getting into the mindset of people that find this useful. Because I don't want to be bombarded by all that kind of stuff. I have a hard time being bombarded by news headlines throughout the day on RSS feeds. I couldn't imagine if I was also watching the equivalent of a news ticker where every 10 seconds I've gotten 12 more news articles or people shouting at me.
See, that's the problem with my Facebook at this point. I tried not to add people, and I want to keep my personal Facebook private, and I wanted to keep the network stuff. We have a Facebook fan page, and that was open. And it just turned out that I just started adding people. So now I have like 800-something people that I don't know a lot of them, and it's just stuff that I don't care about. So It's kind of ruined Facebook for me. So maybe this is a good way to, change this. Maybe this is a good way to do that. So it's interesting. I'm curious.
I'm sticking with email as long as possible.
That's it. Just send me an email. Don't Facebook. That's another thing. I have people now that want to have meetings, and like they'll send me a message on Facebook. They're like, "Hey, I would love to talk to you about blah 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 blah. Does any time work out?" And I never take it serious because it's on Facebook.
Right.
Send me an email. Even Twitter. Like I think I tweeted like you, and I was like, "Hey, I really enjoyed the show," but I sent you an email.
Reply back and say, "This is unprofessional, sir.
Do not ever do this." So, it's interesting. But I just wanted to throw in another story because I didn't want it to be just the Windows stuff. But the Windows stuff is the main story here. That is the main headline. Eric, before we wrap up, just your prediction a year from now. What do you think will happen?
I think a year from now, Windows 8 may be close to being released.
Do you think people are going to accept it? Do you think we're going to look back to this a year and a half from now or a year from now and say, wow, we totally had it wrong?
I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I don't think a lot of people do. I don't think a lot of people.
There's too many ways. I know you're looking for an easy answer to close out the show, but there's too many ways it could go. I mean, it could be. It's hard to say if it's unsuccessful on the desktop because they still have that classic mode. So is it a failure if lots of people buy it and run it and use it, but only ever in classic mode? You know, or the other way, or the flip side, if they only ever run it on tablets, or if the tablet side is just never successful, but the desktops are. So there's a lot of things that could happen.
Yeah, interesting though. Very interesting topic. Eric, I want to thank you for coming on. You can check Eric out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the TWiT Network, 11 p.m. East. A little late for the East Coast guys, but tune in. It's a great, great show. I personally enjoyed it. And it's in rotation, right? It's also replaying.
Absolutely. And so that's coming up just in a couple of hours. I'll be going down there to do it.
Yeah, so definitely tune in because we'll be off the air by then. So definitely tune in to live.twit.tv. You can follow Erik at Erik Lanigan on Twitter. Also visit his website, eriklanigan.com. Erik, thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time. I definitely want to have you back soon because you're very informative with this stuff. And you don't
Andrew. Had a great time.
You don't politic with your answers. You don't step back. You tell it like it is, and I like that. And we'll see y'all next week on Tech News Weekly. Good night, everybody.